All right, we are toward the end of the second chapter of Hilchos Deos, a very, very famous chapter, because in it the Rambam began by discussing some, some very famous attitudes that people should have. He spoke about um, the famous Shvil Hazahav, right? So we got the Shvil Hazahav going on. Then we were talking about extremes, right? His um his way to fix people who are on one side to try to bring them back to the middle. Right? We spoke about that. Then we spoke about the two exceptions, which are gaiva and kas, which being extreme is acceptable, right? And then we spoke about last class on Thursday the term silence is golden, right? That was the Rambam spoke about that. Siag l'chachma shtika, right? And then he's like interweaving all these various, it's a little bit like, Farmer's Almanac, if you've ever read that by Ben Franklin, just you know, basic advice. Um, and then the last thing we read was Halacha Vav, where we spoke about Echad B'Peh Echad B'Alev, right? Fakers, right? And what we call Genevas Das. That was six. That was an interesting one about tricking people and leading them to believe something when you didn't really mean it, right? So that's how the Rambam ended off six, and we are up to, I believe, seven. In seven, the Rambam ends off, right? This is the last halacha of Perek Beis. He ends off kind of where he started, where he's going to talk about, more of the middle of the road. And the way he begins is, again, more practical advice that he gives. And this is really found in three or four Mishnayos in Pirkei Avos, right? Pirkei Avos is the source for a lot of what the Rambam is going to say in this chapter, and specifically this halacha, where he says, Lo yehe adam ba'al schok uma hasalos. Okay, these are people who are extremely jocular, right? Joking all the time. You can't take them seriously. They're full of laughter, literally, and they are, as we say, the class clown, right? There's always someone like that. So the Rambam says, do not be that person. So that's on one extreme. And on the other extreme, right? If you want to call this like your modern day manic depressive, right? So mania is when you're too happy, right? You're the clown. And on the other side is the depressive side, right? Velo atseva onen, right? You can't be, depressed on the other side, right? So what are you left with? You're left with right down the middle, okay? Ela sameach, Rambam says it very succinctly, right? Again, easier said than done, as usual. But the Rambam says, just be good old, you know, happy. Okay, in one word. Because the Rambam quotes a Gemara that's in a couple of places that says that when you are full of levity and lightheadedness and you're joking around all the time, that usually leads to bad things. So on the one side, on the one extreme, you can't be full of laughter too much. You can't be too funny. This doesn't mean you can't be a comedian, right? Because a comedian has a very important job, right? It makes people that are sad happy. I remember that Gemara that discussed there was a comedian once, and the rabbis were praising him because he would go and make the sad people happy, right? So it's very, very noble, right, to make people happy.
Tainis, Chaf Aleph.
Tainus chaf aleph, right? That's the That's the Ilfer of Yochanan daf, I believe. Right, the funny looking one. Um, anyways, so that's the story about being way, way too happy, no good. And then again, on the other side of the pendulum, below atzev abel, don't walk around like a Debbie Downer, like the world is coming to an end, right? Now, this end of the sentence, I don't really understand. Like, okay, so don't be right, don't be left, be in the middle. And the commentators kind of, I think I saw the Kesef Mishnah, the Lecha Mishnah, like they're scratching their head, like, what does this mean? Mikabel Kol Adam B'Sever Panim Yafos is obviously a famous Mishnah at the end of the first chapter of Pirkei Avos, right? Where the commentators in Pirkei Avos say this is referring to how to treat a guest, right? When your guest comes into your house, talk to him, don't just like ignore him. It's not a nice thing to do. So like, why is the Rambam saying this at the end of this particular rule about this particular halacha about don't be too happy, right? Don't be too manic, and don't be too depressive. But greet people nicely, right? The two don't really jive, but okay, be that as it may. Next, famous line: "V'chen lo yihiyeh bal nefesh rachava." Don't be desiring, right? Don't want too much. Nifal lahon. Don't overreach beyond what you could afford. Wow, some practical advice, right? Don't rush to own things. V'lo save, and don't be, on the other hand, right? Just you don't want anything. Ubata mamlacha. Whoa! So this is a anti-kolel Rambam, one of the many, right? Don't be batal mimlacha. Don't be unemployed. You have to work. I think I brought this down when we had many of the Tuesday night classes with the 6 or 7 sources that talk about the importance of working instead of learning all day, right? I think there were 7 or 8 sources. I think this was one of them I brought down. This Rambam, right? It says you can't be off from work. You have to work. That's on the one side. Okay, I got to take a break. 1 second. Emergency.
Work.
Abal ayin tova, elabal ayin tova, umemayit, elabal ayin tova, memayit be'esek, v'osek b'torah. You have to have what we call an ayin tov, a good eye, okay? And don't work too much. Again, he's going back and forth from one extreme to the other. Don't be a workaholic, okay? Because you won't have time for Torah. You have to find the right balance. And now he's taking another line from Pirkei Avos that says, Ezuhu ashir hasameach bechelko, right? Again, easier said than done. He should be happy with what he has. Now, not everything jives together in the Rambam as like one sentence doesn't necessarily lead into the next sentence. There aren't so many, it's not like every sentence has a logical progression. Some are a little bit off key, if you know what I mean. But nevertheless, v'lo bal kitata, v'lo bal kina, v'lo bal taiva, v'lo rodef acher kavod. Right? Again, Pirkei Avos. Don't fight with people, don't have kina, don't have taiva, and don't run after kavod, right? We say kol borech, right? If you run after kavod, then the Gemara, the Mishnah says bad things are going to happen, right? You have to run away from kavod. And if you run away from kavod, then kavod gets you. If you run toward kavod, kavod escapes, right? It's antithetical, right? Of what you want to happen.
So then if that's the case, you should run towards kavod. Because if you're running away from kavod, it's going to get you.
It's going to
get
you.
You should run to kavod.
Right. This is like one of those paradoxes that we can't solve. Right, Deborah? You like those paradoxes? I know what you're thinking. Okay.
You know what I'm thinking?
Yes, I do. Kach Amru Chachamim. Now he quotes the very, very famous, right, chapter in Mishnah in Pirkei Avos that says Hakina v'hataiva v'hakavod. People who want too much, people who love the limelight and relish being center stage, right, without mentioning names, right, and their taiva and kavod, and all they want is to be mentioned all the time and be the center of attention. Motzian es ha'adam min ha'olam, right? A very, very harsh statement. It removes you. You are not, right? You become like exactly like Mida Keneged Mida. You want to have everything, right? And the Gemara in Sota talks about this, where it talks about how the snake wanted to rule and right, and everything that you want ends up backfiring, right? So don't ask for too much because you will lose everything. Klalo shel davar yelech b'mida habeinanis. So how does the Rambam end off the chapter? He says, just take the middle of the road. Shebachol deya v'deya, right? In each and every trait, each and every characteristic that we possess, ad shihia kol de'osav mechuvanot be'emtzaut, so that the shvil hazahav that we spoke about for the last 6 halachos is, right, we can be Makayim this, right? And we're right down the middle. V'husha Shlomo Amar, and this is, in conclusion, what Shlomo means. In Mishle, he says, Pales magal raglecha b'chol drachecha yikonu. He says, well, the Rambam says, it wasn't me. Look at Mishle, right? The book of Proverbs says, if you make your feet straight, pales, the word in Hebrew today for a carpenter's level, it's called a peles, right? It comes from this pasuk over here, the word pales, and peles means to level something, right? When you level, right, your feet, right, and you're not going in one extreme direction, kol drachecha yukonu, all of your ways are going to be straight. All right, and that's how he ends off. Okay, now let's just start the next chapter. All right, because is that okay, Shlomo?
We have the Ramban in 2 minutes.
Oh, we have the Ramban breathing down our neck. So okay, but right. So the next chapter is also very famous, Perek Gimel. It talks about well, we'll have to leave it off. I'm not going to tell you what it talks about, or else you don't need me. So okay. We'll continue tomorrow night.